Kuzari again. Thank God, Baruch Hashem. We're continuing. Yesterday we left off with the parable that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is bringing. Now, those of you at home are wondering why am I pausing, because we have people in the studio audience pointing like this. And I figured what they wanted was the air conditioning. And so that's what they were doing. But I was wondering why people are walking in the room pointing like this. And either they were doing the Saturday Night Live fever dance or I don't know what. So the rabbi is trying to address a major difference between other religions and Judaism. And the parable that he gives is somebody breaking into a pharmacy where there's a pharmacist and a physician, where they are dispensing the medications and medicines based upon their knowledge and understanding of what ailments people suffer. But the thief who broke in doesn't know medicine, doesn't know what medication works with what illness, and he starts dispensing these pills willy-nilly, just giving them out. Some people die from this, some people, nothing happens, some people get sicker, and some people, by chance, get better. It's possible. Right? Are you aware of something called placebo? What's a placebo?
You trick your brain into thinking that.
Yes, we trick, right? There's certain studies that they give people pills that are called sugar pills that they don't really do anything. And yet, we find that when we investigate it, actually the body heals itself. It's the power of the mind over the body. We're done dragging chairs over there. So, the people who invent religion, who are coming up with all sorts of rituals, all sorts of actions, they are simply like this thief dispensing medications. Sometimes it's useless. Sometimes they might hit it right on the nail. And so he says that if you went to the doctor, he would tell you that this medication goes with this person. And this person, when you take this medication, you need to increase your protein intake. You need to increase your sleep. Drink a lot of liquids, right? Sometimes they tell you have to take this with food, because if you don't take it with food, you have a tummy ache. And there's some people you tell them they need to get exercise. They need to increase their sleep. They're not sleeping enough. They need fresh air. Or they need to get up, not sleep till 10 or 11 in the morning. And so based on each ailment or illness, the physician and the pharmacist can fine-tune the medication to help him. So he says that is how people behaved prior to the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? They were simply relying on whether it was astrology or people who understood how the natural world works. And they would follow from this nonsense to that nonsense, from that nonsense to that nonsense. They would just move around trying different things. Now, and they would shift from one God to another. We know that people who were polytheistic, people who believed that there are many different gods in the universe, usually they worship many other gods. Right? The Egyptian religion had a base of 9 deities, 9 gods plus Pharaoh himself, which was Horus, one of the Egyptian deities. So they had literally 10. Okay? The Canaanites, the Jewish people replaced in Eretz Yisrael, also had multiple deities. The people who lived across the Jordan River, the Moabites, the Ammonites, right, the Philistines, they all had different deities that they were worshiping. They had their special one, but they had also other ones that they were worshiping. Why? Because that's what people did. And it's, I think, till this day, that's what's happening in polytheistic societies such as India. It's not only the Greeks and the Romans. This is a good cup of coffee. Whoever made it. What is a masculine form of barista? Doesn't exist. There's no such thing? Okay. All right. I don't know. Because I knew the term barista, but I thought it was feminine. And so I asked somebody, what is the male form? Right? The gender. So he said baristo. But I don't know. And then he said what you said, Baruch, that it was only a job for women. But that's not PC. We don't believe that women are, women can do anything they want. And the opposite is true also. Men should be able to do anything they want. So if a man wants to make coffee and make, heart-shaped with the milk and all of that, then vakasha, why not? Can't discriminate, right? Okie doke. Let's keep going. People are going to write letters and, complain.
300 views per video on YouTube.
What?
You have 300 views on video per video on YouTube.
Per video?
Yes.
That's not bad. Good, Baruch Hashem. It means that the teachings of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and the Torah is going on. Baruch Hashem, that's my purpose. And then I thank the Kadosh Baruch Hu and all the viewers. Thank you very much. And Be'ezer Hashem, it should continue to grow and bring more people to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, believing in the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the God that took us out of Egypt. Right?
Right.
Good. I need more coffee. So, we have here in the short passage a description or the history of world religions. Once the Torah came to the world, everything changed. Every change changed. We no longer are hitting in the dark. But we know one thing, says the rabbi. The truth is that what is beneficial to human beings is through the connection of divinity, which is called Inyan Eloki, Amar al-Ilahi, Amar Ilahi, which is, we're going to get into it in great detail, because it's very, very important to the understanding of the Kuzari. What is this Inyan Elohi? It is, there's some aspect in us that allows us to connect to God. It does not exist in every human being. Okay? And so, if you have it, it's beneficial to bring you to knowing what to do and what not to do. And if you don't have it, you're the blind leading the blind. You won't be able to figure out on your own how to connect to God. You could try, but it won't work. You might hit or miss here and there, but it's not going to be consistent. So the king says, okay, let's return to the real issue. And the king says, tell me, how did your religion start and grow? How did it get from one person to a multitude? How did different opinions, where people were arguing about the nature of God and the nature of prophecy and all the other things that religions argue about, how did it go from multiple opinions to one view? And how long did it take until the pillars, the basic principles of Judaism were established? Because every religion doesn't start out exactly the way it ended up. There's a process. First, it starts with individuals, then that are transmitting this and teaching others and bringing them closer to the so-called truth. And then, slowly, over time, they're able to influence others, get political control, and use the power of the state to spread and propagate the religion. This is what he says. Now, if you don't know the history of religion, then it sounds very strange. But if you know the history of Christianity and of Islam, that's exactly what happened. When did Christianity spread, really spread? When the Roman emperor took on Christianity in the 4th century to be the imperial religion. And then the state switched from persecuting Christians to advocating Christianity and persecuting all other religions. So the power of the state made Christianity spread throughout the world. And in Islam, when Muhammad was in Mecca, he wasn't very successful in convincing the Arabs who lived in Mecca to follow him. He had to actually leave Mecca, make the hijrah, which is the migration, to leave Mecca and go to the city of Medina. And in Medina, he became the political ruler of that city. And then he conquered Mecca. And from there, he began to spread Islam. And really, Islam spread beyond the boundaries of Arabia after his death through what they call the Ar-Rashidun, the rightly guided caliphs. There were 4 of them, where they began conquering the Middle East from both the Byzantines, who were the Christians, who were controlling major sections of the Middle East, and from the Persians, the Sasanians, because those 2 empires were tired and exhausted fighting one another, and so the Arabs were able to conquer the whole area, going all the way at 711 they cross over to Spain. Think from Arabia, they conquer Damascus, right, where Syria is today, Israel, Egypt, into North Africa, right, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, cross over the Straits of Gibraltar, right, Jabal al-Tariq, that's the name of and enter Spain, and then conquer Spain, reaching almost to the Alps, right, the French Alps, and then they're stopped by Charlemagne. And on the other side, they're going into Iraq, Iran, parts of Turkey, then crossing over right where Afghanistan is, into Pakistan, India. It takes them a while, okay, about 150 years to do all of this. But it's an enormous, and they're using the power of the state to, let's call it, encourage peoples that are being conquered to convert to Islam. Whether they did it by the sword or not, I don't want to get into that. We're not doing a history of the Islamicate. I just want to make sure that you understand why Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in the Kuzari explains the natural process of how religions spread. Judaism, as we all know, did not spread like this. There was only one time that I'm aware of in Jewish history where a Jewish army conquered a land and forcibly converted the residents there to Judaism. It happened only once. What? What? Givon? No.
Not biblical.
No, it's not biblical. No, not at all. These were the Maccabees. The Hasmoneans, when they conquered where the Edomites were living, they forcibly converted them. They circumcised them and made them all Jews. That's unprecedented, and that hasn't happened before. So just an interesting occurrence in Jewish history. Okay. So these are a set of questions that the king is asking the rabbi. Explain to me, how did Judaism start, and how did it spread, and how did it grow, and how did you get to whatever you have today? And he says to him, the way that you describe the spread of religion is only applicable to religions that were developed by human intellect. when human beings come up with ideas, and it's not a question whether, I'm not talking whether Christianity is right or Islam is right or they're wrong. It doesn't matter. From the perspective of the Kuzari, those are man-made religions. And man-made religions have a certain way, a trajectory of how they spread. And the description that the way that the king presented the spread of these religions, he says that's accurate to human-made religions. But that's not how religion, Judaism, developed. It started exactly like the creation of the world. Think about that while I have a sip of my coffee. How was the world created? You want both of them or just one of them? Nathaniel, you're blocking. People are going to ask, who's that guy with those cute elbows? And now what we're going to say. So now you're going to have to stick your face so people can see the elbow to the face. I'm kidding. Don't. Listen, you don't want to compete with this face. What?
I agree with you.
Good, Baruch Hashem. So, creation, how did God create the universe? Do you guys know?
Yeah.
What's this?
He restricted himself.
He used a lot of words.
Oh, yeah.
That's not how some of the commentators explain. But that's okay. He what? He used the hay. Okay. Yes, sir.
He threw a rock into a void.
What?
The rock of like creation.
The rock of creation.
Yeah. The dog.
Okay.
Hey,
They all come from monkey.
Speak for yourself. God said, let it be, and it was. Right? Boom. There wasn't a process. God simply said it, and it existed. Now, some of the Mefarshim say that what God really did was first created the entire heavens and the earth, everything that's in it, and later on it was just sort of the unfolding or unpacking of that box. So there was one box, universe. And the rest of the days was unpacking that box, and therefore you see that there are 10 utterances that says, let there be light, let there be this, let there be that, and those are sort of unpacking and setting the whole system up. But it was, for our benefit, instantaneous. Boom. That's how Judaism began, says Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. How so? Har Sinai. Boom. There was no process. There wasn't one person who received a message and went and knocked on the door. Hi, God spoke to me and told me that we're leaving Egypt. Like, huh? Yeah, okay, fine. And by the way, he gave the Torah, and this is what you have to do now. What? It wasn't that way. There wasn't a process. Once Moshe Rabbeinu took us out of Egypt, right, with all the miraculous events that God did in Egypt and in Kriyat Yam Suf, the crossing of the Sea of Reeds, right? Also known as the Red Sea. Yam Suf, though, it's not red, it's Reed Suf. He brought us to Har Sinai and then revealed himself, and that's how the religion started. Boom. At once. There was no development. There was no, let's have, sort of a few people over here, a little study group over here, and let these people spread it to these people, and sort of, like a pyramid scheme. Yes?
The whole basis of Judaism is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and then the Shvatim. This was all before religion.
Whatever existed prior, right, is not how God began Judaism. We call them Avraham Avinu, the first Jew. But it wasn't revealed, right? We say that he kept the Torah to the extent that he understood what? The will of Hashem.
That's why we say God of Moshe and Shemona Esrei instead of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
Because they are the ones that set the path correctly. And that they were setting everything up for the Torah to be revealed to us. But many times when the Gemara brings a mitzvah that Avraham Avinu was commanded, such as circumcision, right? It says, no, we don't keep it because of that. We keep it because the Torah commands us to do that. Which means the Torah, and take Shabbos for example. Shabbos, the Jewish people received the commandment to keep Shabbos prior to Har Sinai. It happened in Mara. Okay? When they started getting the man, that's when they were commanded for Shabbos. Okay? But they didn't have all the laws. They didn't have everything. It's sort of like God says, look, here you go. But it wasn't individuals going and trying to... that became only once. He says it's mamish like the creation of the world. So he says, whoa, you're really exaggerating here, buddy. So the rabbi says, let me explain it to you. It's even crazier than you think. Crazy in a sense is hard to believe, but that's what happened. That what? That the Jewish people, Bnei Israel, were enslaved in Mitzrayim. There were 600,000 men between the age of 20 to 60, approximately, right? And they were all what? They kept their relationship to their tribes. Each person in Egypt knew what tribe he belonged to. They were there for 210 years, yet they all knew, I'm from the tribe of Naphtali, I'm the tribe of Dan, I'm the tribe. They all knew. Okay? And nobody left Egypt, says Yehuda Levi. And no non-Jew joined their camp. That is, they stayed as a unit. And they all of them were waiting for God to keep the promise that He made to their forefathers. This is what they were. They were sitting there waiting. Okay? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He promised them to bring them to Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan, and that they will inherit this land, which is the 7 nations that currently live there will not be there anymore. And it's at a time where the Jewish people were at the lowest. Being slaves in Egypt, that was the lowest that they could ever be. Okay? And they're under the thumb of Paro, who now decrees to kill all the male babies, right? And God sends, just when they're the lowest, sends Moshe and Aaron, and they, with all their weakness, they had, what I mean weakness is that they had nothing to use against Paro, outside of whatever powers God gave them, right? But outside of that, there's nothing. They couldn't threaten Paro with war. They couldn't threaten him with anything. They were simply dependent on the goodwill of Paro. And if you think about this, God gave Moshe Rabbeinu a sign. He says, when you go to Paro, here's the sign. What was the sign? Throw the cane, the staff, and the staff will turn to what? A serpent. Good. And then grab the serpent again, and it'll turn back to a staff. And if you learn the sugya on the Medrash, Moses does this. Do you know what happened? That's only in the desert. They all did the same. The Egyptians did the same trick. Just imagine this. Moshe Rabbeinu comes, he says, Hashem gave me a sign. He throws it. And they're like, really? Medrash says they brought school children with pencils. They all threw the pencil and they turned it into serpents. Imagine Moshe Rabbeinu's jaw would drop like, And it's a question, why didn't the Kadosh Baruch Hu, why didn't God give Moshe Rabbeinu a miracle that nobody could replicate? Like, I don't know, tear the roof and then put it back on. Why did he give him something that the Egyptians, what, God didn't know that the Egyptians, all of them know how to do this? Of course he knew. Why, Davka, did he give him the one sign that they all know how to do? Right, they're like, no big deal. Yeah, we can do this. Because really, it is a test for Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron. They're going in there by themselves to the most powerful military leader in the world at the time. Who says they're going to come out alive? And they're going there to do what? Hashem's work. And they're making this sign, and it's a complete failure to an extent. Because they're all doing it. But it was a matter of how much emunah and bitachon do they have in the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Kuzari, against all the might of Paro, they had nothing but whatever was given to them by Hashem. And we see that Paro could not hide from them. He couldn't command anything negative or to harm them. And he could not protect himself from the 10 plagues. That he was powerless. There's nothing he could do. Nothing. And the 10 makois, the plagues, Yehuda Levi says, had a certain order. And the order is as follows. First, their water, then their land, then the air, right? Then their vegetation, then their animals, then their own bodies, and then their neshamas. That is, there is a progression in the 10 plagues that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is showing. That we're moving from water to earth, to air, to vegetation, to animals, to their bodies, to then take their nefesh. And the nefesh, their death, was instantaneous. People just dropped dead. Large numbers. Like that, exactly like that. Good. And there wasn't one single house that they did not have somebody die. And the person that died was the firstborn, the most favored, the most powerful, the strongest, the blessed, whatever that was. That person was gone. Except in any of the Jewish homes. All of the plagues had a set time with a warning prior to this, and not only a warning that if you don't let us go, but also telling him, listen, this will happen on this date, that's what's going to happen. And the plague would hit, and it would stop at exactly the time that Moshe Rabbeinu would say. And so, why? So that it would be sure that it's clear to everybody that it wasn't a natural occurrence. It wasn't some astrological power that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to figure that out. Because the best astrologers at the time lived in Egypt. They were Egyptians. And it wasn't coincidence. Right? There's some plagues that Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paro, when would you like me to get rid of this? So he says, tomorrow. Fine, tomorrow it is. No problem. The whole point was to show that everything that is happening is intentional by the will of God. He has a will that does whatever he chooses at whatever time he chooses for the purposes that he wants. And so, the Jewish people then leave Egypt. They head towards Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, with the two guides, right? They have the cloud and the pillar of fire that is leading them, and they follow this, and their leaders are the two elders of Bnei Israel, Moshe and Aaron. And that they are, you're talking about people who are in their 80s. These are not spring chickens, right? And he says, at the time of the Jewish people leaving Egypt, they had very few commandments. Very few. And Moshe Rabbeinu does not cancel them and does not say you don't have to keep them, but rather on the path to Har Sinai, he adds a few of them. And they reach the sea, the Egyptians are pursuing them, the sea splits, they cross, the Egyptians drown, and the rest is the story, says the rabbi, I'm sure you've heard. Now, so the king says, okay, it's clear that this is how the Inyan Eloki works. This divine matter, this connection to God, how this works. That the Torah was given through miracles, then it's a duty upon people to accept the Torah. Because nobody could deny this. Because all of the things that are happening, it's not just one, it's not just two, it's not just three. There is a long series of events over a long period of time that reinforce the idea that God is in charge and God is doing all of this. And so therefore it's not witchcraft, it's not trickery, and it's not delusion. People are not just imagining the sea split. People are not imagining what happened in Egypt, sort of the plagues. And you can look it up. There's people who are interested in, finding outside extra biblical evidence for the plagues, and there is an Egyptian document that does discuss this, of giving the plagues that had hit Egypt. They're not in the same order as the plagues in the Torah, but they do mention the plagues. They're there. Egyptian had nothing to do with the Torah. And so, the king says, I guess the people who wish to reject this evidence are simply people who are stubborn. And then says the rabbi, so after this, the Jewish people reach the desert. There's no food. They're in the desert. There's no food. And God provides them sustenance. Right? We call that bread, min hashamayim, lechem min hashamayim, the man. And he doesn't do it one day. He does it every day, except for Shabbat. Right? On Shabbos, there was no man. They would get Friday double. Every day, some sort of food, lechem, that did not exist prior to that. And they ate this type of food for 40 days. 40 years. 40 years they're eating this. If they didn't have the man, they wouldn't have survived. And so the king says, okay, that's a good argument. Because 600,000 men and all the people who are with them, women, children, right? They would get man for 40 years. That clearly was evidence to them that God is behind whatever is happening to them. And also that the fact that it's not coming on Shabbat, that was also miraculous. It's coming every day, but not Shabbat. If it's a natural phenomenon, tell me what natural phenomena that only is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, not Shabbos. Either it's every day, then it's every day. But the fact that it didn't happen on Shabbos, it tells you that it's miraculous.
The people would just believe it would come.
Yeah, it came. And you would only get the amount for that day. Right? If it's Sunday, in the morning you get out of your tent, you would get your food on Sunday. That's for one day. What about tomorrow? You have to trust that Hashem would feed you.
For 40 years, they would just trust.
40? You have a choice? What are you going to do?
Run.
Take 2 from the day before.
No, it ended. That's it. You couldn't take more because what would happen? Oh, the people who tried that, and what happened? Whatever they left behind became full of worms and they couldn't eat it. But on Friday, when they got a double portion, the man wouldn't spoil, so they could have it for Shabbos. There was another, the Medrash says that the man would be waiting for you in the morning, close to the door if you were a tzaddik, and the way that we're less and less and less tzaddik, you would have to walk farther and farther and farther. So you would know exactly if you were a good boy the day before, or you have to do tshuva.
Does that apply to us nowadays?
We don't have man.
Yeah,
If we had the man, we would know. Right? You wake up in the morning, you open the door, it's not there. It's like, how far do I have to go now? Walking 3 blocks, 4 blocks. You're like, okay, Hashem. Oh, that would be a big problem.
Yeah,
How do you know which one is yours? It says your name on it.
It's next to you, outside of your door. This is why, when Moshe Rabbeinu, when he had people who were going against his, kind of rebelling against him, he said, all right, let's see you tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Why not now? Because he said, check out where the man is. If the man is next to your doorstep, then you're a tzaddik. But if it's not, then it's going to be far away. That's a sign for you. And Moshe Rabbeinu had it in front of him. That's I saw that Rabbi Yankele Galinsky brought that as an idea. But then he said, that made sense to me. But he was giving this shear to Chassidim, and they said that wouldn't work. Why? Because if they had Chassidim, they would go get the man and put it in front of his door. And so that wouldn't work. That's what he said. Yeah?
my question was if it applies to nowadays.
What apply? We don't have man today.
But like it represents your parnassa, no?
Pardon? Yeah? It could be. It
less
could
of
be.
a tzaddik you are, you have to go work harder, go further distance.
It could be, but not necessarily. Okay, let's stop today. Let's stop here, and we'll continue tomorrow in Mirtzeh Hashem.